All right, here's week 4, 6:13. Yesterday, we didn't have quiet time because it was Sunday, and so we basically just ate breakfast and went straight to church. I personally appreciate the traditional service where the hymns are, sung. Though I will say I agree with Joe, Noah, and Karina that not knowing the songs does make it less enjoyable. But I feel like the hymns are just a better quality worship, like in terms of lyrics. And so I kind of, want to learn them because, hymns are cool. Joe got kind of weirded out by something during the service. It was never fully explained, but basically ended up helping out in the kitchen and walking around outside. Oh, and Reese sat by us, so that was cool. As we were about to leave, Chase, the Jake or Jill Bartram of the group, for you New Zealand people, was like, hey, we're going to eat. Want to join us? So we were like, yeah, okay. And so we joined the young adults and a few high schoolers for some grub. While we were on our way to this legendary place, it was actually so packed that we went to a boring pizza place instead because we just couldn't fit inside. However, it was good. Got to talk to some more people and get to know them some more. So it was nice. And actually, so many breadsticks were bought. Way too much. We took 2 boxes worth home. Once we got back, Caleb dyed Joe's hair, which worked out in the long run, a lot better than it looked initially. As that was happening, I exchanged glances with Karina being like, oh no, but it turned out to be decent. I then played some table tennis with Joe, and eventually Noah, who progressed to the point where I'm teaching him how to topspin. He's actually learning so fast. We then ate food, which for me was french fries and Chick-fil-A sauce, as well as leftover breadsticks, and then went down to the lake and played volleyball. And it was the first time Joe and I got to be on a team, so it was super fun. However, we kind of crushed, so we decided probably best not to do that. Even though Joe and I are trying to work on becoming less competitive with each other since we've noticed that we have that tendency. So the aforementioned working together as a team. Other than that, I kind of went to my room, initially to read, but I ended up calling with Benj, and that was good. He's actually such an interesting guy. I could see myself becoming really good friends with him eventually. I then called with Ben, as in my brother, and that was more than 82% good. It was basically like one of our biannual deep talks, interspersed with comments about the toads he was catching and attempting to slack as the roofs he was... Oh, as he was attempting to slack. Plus the roofs he was illegally getting on. But yeah, I really was glad I got to talk to him, and I didn't want... and I wanted to talk the rest... Oh, and I want to talk the rest of my family here too soon. I see. I actually took 3 hours or so by the time I finished that conversation, so by the time it was done, I was ready to hit the sack. I actually got ample sleep, so I'm feeling great. The next day, 6:14. Yesterday, quiet time was good but average. We pumped some iron in the morning, and that went well, but nothing really eventful happened. Once we got back, it was the beginning of Noah's planning week, and thus he had planned for us to do a few activities. First of all, we started off by guessing what other people's opinions on controversial topics were, which in some cases were surprisingly hard to do. The only thing that really surprised me that time, though, that I would have been... Okay, the only thing that really surprised me out of that time was that I said I would be willing to promote something I didn't believe in for money, which oddly enough kind of caught me off guard, even when I said it. I think the reason I said it was because I often promote things I don't believe in social contexts. Like if someone says they love dancing, I'll be like, oh yeah, that's awesome, when really I don't think that at all. I just don't want to murder their hopes and dreams. So obviously, if you're willing to do it for social acceptance, I'd be willing to do it for money. However, I do really value at least internal consistency, if not external, so potentially that's why I found it odd, because I actually can't stand lying and basically never would do it. But yeah, I kind of threw myself for a loop with that, but otherwise the event was pretty normal. After that, we had a bit of a comedic round to break it up, and we wrote each other 2 questions, where someone else wrote 2 answers to those questions, and we just randomly paired the questions and answers. And it was surprisingly funny, especially the second time when we had more control of the questions and went with which questions went with the answers. It was definitely a better time than I thought it would be. Finally, we all wrote a diary entry for the other people from their perspective, as best we could imitate it about the last 2 days regarding the drive to California. Mine were notably longer and hard to read than anyone else's, but I've got to say Caleb definitely did the best with those. He took significantly longer than the rest of us, but the effort was well reflected because it actually sounded like something, the person he was writing for could have said. He included details of things they were likely to notice and left out details they probably wouldn't. And he just did really well. Karina also did notably well, but not as good as Caleb, and thus I'm deeply pleased as I'm tired of Karina beating us at everything. After that, we had dinner, tacos made by Caleb, the legend himself, and then Karina went to this women's Bible study with the young adults that were doing, which, when asked how it went, gave a whopping 9, so that was actually fantastic. And then the rest of us guys joined Reese and some old people for 3 hours of volleyball over at church. And that was really fun. I teamed up with Joe initially because I like playing with Joe, and we're trying to be less competitive. But then I ended up teaming with Reese, which seemed like a pretty bonding experience for us both. We worked together well. Reese is actually really good at volleyball, so he kind of carried the team. But yeah, that was a blast. The only downside being the floor was tile, so it significantly hurt my knees for all the diving. But yeah, I talked with Noah a bit, played some table tennis, and that was the day. The next day. Tuesday, I skipped the run I wanted to do because my legs were actually quite sore from the volleyball prior. I suspect it was all the jumping, but I can't be certain. During breakfast, there was a lengthy debate over who was to have the last hash brown, which I forfeited before I was full. And then, after 3 minutes of discussion, Chris took a third, and we were all dismayed and impressed at the same time. But yeah, that was divided disproportionately according to physical strength and the esteemed maiden's powers. But yeah, it was kind of funny. After that, we all worked on recording parts for an a cappella song, which Noah really wasn't knowledgeable about how to do, but Joe kind of took the lead on that, so it was okay. He has a lot of editing before him, so that's gonna be fun. But yeah, I was able to sing an octave higher than Karina thought I could, so I was glad to exceed her expectations. Other than that, we just had to like think up what kind of things we're uncomfortable doing but permitted to do, and then have the group choose one of those for us. The one chosen for me was to read my past creative writing, poetry, in front of others, and I think I'm gonna die. It's gonna happen today and in less than an hour, so I feel great. Anyway, yeah, that happened, and the rest of the day was pretty chill as far as I can recall. I talked with my family, minus Ben, briefly, and that was good. Otherwise, I just went to bed because I knew I had to wake up early next morning. For that next morning, I had to attend a virtual CSU orientation because even though I have like 62 college credits, I'm still a freshman according to CSU. So that was basically entirely boring and uninformative. There was really no reason for me to be there except it's mandatory, so I had to. But yeah, it took from like 8 in the morning to 1:30 with some breaks. After that, I caught up with Jordan, who seemed to be doing well, so that was good. I then talked to Alan. Well, more accurately, he talked to me because my explicit goal in the call was just to listen, as I noticed that with mine, his relationship in particular, he often puts in a lot more than I give back, so I wanted to be, doing a deliberate effort to try and change that. So yeah, I got to listen to him for a few hours. It was really interesting. And when he was done talking, the call ended for potentially circumstantial reasons, but I'm going to ignore those and pretend it was purely planned. And I really enjoy Alan. Just a god human. Anyway, after that, I kind of just hung around and read some. I was working through this book that was supposed to be among the best defenses of Protestantism, but I got to like page 50 and after they covered their perspective on the issues of canon, which I'm decently educated in, and they totally misinterpreted that data. So I'm going to drop that book and find something better. But yeah, to counteract that disappointment, Caleb made some salmon, and it was actually fantastic. I think I just really like fish, but I also like the sauce he made. Really good. Other than that, Joe and I had a really, really, really good talk. Like, definitely the best conversation I've had with him to date. However, it did mean that I got to bed at like 3, so that was a bit of a sad, but worth it. Once the next day arrived, I skipped my run because I needed the extra sleep. And yesterday we had young adults swimming thing scheduled, so I figured that would be a good excuse. The morning consisted of us eating breakfast as per usual, though this day I started my day with a cold shower, and that was actually fantastic. Like, I just felt ready to face the day after that. Also, weirdly, the water set at max cold setting starts to feel warm after like a minute. I have no idea what's up with that. For the activity, we memorized a chapter of Psalms. Korea did it both flawlessly and effortlessly, and I'm salty. Noah did it flawlessly, but he looked like he had to try. And Joe did it better than me, which, I mean, yay for him, but he kept talking about how bad he was in memorization, so I was sure I could outperform him, but no! He just had to go and show me up. But yeah, he did well. Very impressive. Overall, I think we all did pretty well, though. Other than that, I had a conversation with Noah, which was big bueno. And then we all went to Young Adults for the summer kickoff, and the venue was so cool. It was in this backwoods lake with like a raft and a diving board and this cool gazebo thing. It was just epic. I initiated some spike ball on the barge, and we did teams of 3. So you could just like hit it really hard, and then someone had to like dive off in the water and try to knock the ball back to their teammates before they hit the water, and then they could keep playing while they swam back. It was actually really fun. The only other really noble thing that happened during that time is I met Catherine, who's a Kierkegaard expert, and I think she did her doctorate on him. So that conversation was very interesting. It was nice to talk to someone more educated, but, that said, her system was definitely a hodgepodge, and she was more of an existentialist mystic than I prefer. But still decent conversation, and hopefully I can show her why Thomism is better than her hodgepodge system, eventually. But yeah, came home, was tired from last night, so I went to bed fairly early, and that was the day. Yesterday was good, mostly. The morning was average, usual, but fine, and we had to do an uncomfortable but legal thing that day, so that was less fine. The task allotted to me was read one of my short stories and poems out loud, and I got pretty nervous about that. Not exactly sure why that makes me so anxious. I like when people read my work that the past, me poured my heart and soul into, but me reading my old work in front of people is actually terrifying. So yeah, I started off with a non-emotional tale of my old chemistry teacher just to ease myself into it, and then I read one of my best short stories and then one of my best poems. Definitely not my favorite task, but I did it, and everyone seemed to like the short story a lot, so that was really nice. To see my old work was appreciated. I actually worked so hard on that story back then. But yeah, I really appreciate everyone's overwhelmingly positive response. As far as I can discern, it was honest. And yep, I might not be so nervous doing that again in the future. But yeah, if you want to read some of my past creative work, just let me know, and I'll send some Google Docs your way. After that, I went to play Frisbee, which was fun, and we had quite a good game. Till Joe tore like half the skin off his bottom of his toe, and I contested for Frisbee with this guy named Thane, and I sprained my thumb pretty bad. I didn't want to leave prematurely, and we were getting to the end of the game, so I just soldiered through, but it actually started to hurt really bad toward the end. I still can't move my thumb, at least it doesn't hurt anymore. So yeah, we headed home. I looked up what to do with the sprained thumb, and people helped me with my one-handed state. Karina drove us to Uba City, which was her uncomfortable driving in traffic, and we got me a cast, as well as a few other things from Walmart, before in this hole-in-the-wall Indian restaurant, which at first blush I wasn't super excited about, but man, they had good food. It was totally worth it. We wanted to tip them, but the only cash we had on us was $100, so we ended up leaving them a $100 tip. The waitress found me afterward and was like, "Sir, did you mean to tip me for this $100?" And I was like, "Yep." And she got really excited and said thank you a lot, and it was really cool. I now want to be rich, if for no other reason than to leave $100 tips everywhere I go. After I dropped Caleb off to go ask strangers for money, his uncomfortable thing, which apparently did not go over well, people apparently are super weirded out and almost angry, except one guy. One guy was cool about it. Karina then drove around, but the traffic was mostly gone at this point, so she eventually stopped because it wasn't really a challenge anymore. And while she did that, I listened to Celtic women songs, which are actually the best, by the way. You should check them out. And started making a playlist of the ones I liked. After that, Caleb came back and then just left again because he wanted to walk around, and Karina wanted to wander around too, but didn't want to go by herself, so I joined her. Met a few interesting people, saw a cat, nothing big. Then after that, we got back, had a conversation, which I appreciate a lot. I realized Karina's a lot like a good mom, unassuming and a bit uninteresting, but there for you if you need her, and good to talk to nonetheless. But that was good. Our conversation ended when someone from across the street got into a very heated argument. There was definitely something going down over there at that gas station for quite some time. Probably a drug deal or something. But then this guy and like pseudo girl, I couldn't tell if the person's gender was actually a girl, but oh well. Started getting in like each other's face, and we decided if it would come to blows, we'd intervene. But it didn't, so we just kind of watched. At that point, Noah came back from walking the dark alone, his challenging task, and then we all went home. Once we got home, we decided to stargaze, which for me, I deeply appreciated. I used my speaker as a pillow, and there was just like this one moment where all of us, minus Caleb, who headed back just before us, were lying there. And it was probably one of my favorite Violet Evergarden songs playing in the background as Noah and Joe bantered about their birth whammons. And Karina was laughing, and I was just like staring at the stars, thinking about how glad I was to be in this moment. It was probably the first like positive flow of emotion I've had so far, and I think I'm going to remember that moment for quite some time. It was a really, really good feeling. However, that time was cut short by an ambush of sprinklers, so a little bit sad. But again, a good way to end, because all things must come to an end, even good things. There you are. That's the third week.